I still remember the moment I picked up his phone. It was late, just after we had finished dinner. The air was thick with the scent of grilled steak and something else, maybe fear. I can't tell anymore. My hands were trembling a little and I kept telling myself I was overreacting. But that tiny, almost imperceptible alert blinking on his screen told me otherwise. I hesitated for a second, then swiped to unlock it. The screen lit up and there it was, a message from his brother, Tom. The message was casual, but the words hit me like a punch in the gut. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Hope you're ready for some fun." The words were simple, but the context, not so much. That night, just hours before my wedding, my fiancé's phone was filled with plans with his brother. The same brother I'd grown up trusting, the one I'd even confided in about my fears and hopes for the future. My stomach twisted. My hands grew clammy. I stared at the screen, feeling something cold and heavy settle in my chest. It wasn't just the message. I noticed a few others earlier that day, filled with teasing emojis and inside jokes that suddenly seemed inappropriate. I scrolled through more, each one confirming what I'd suspected but never wanted to admit. They'd been planning something. Or maybe he'd been cheating on me. No, that wasn't right. Cheating doesn't fit the way I felt, the way I'd trusted him. But then again, what else could it be? I looked around the room, trying to ground myself. I could hear the faint hum of the fridge, the distant traffic outside, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I felt a flicker of nausea. My palms were slick with sweat. I clenched my fists so hard I thought I'd leave marks on my palms. I knew I had to confront him, but I didn't want to be the crazy girl. It felt like I had been living in a fog and now everything was painfully clear. I bit the inside of my cheek. This was my future, my wedding. I had planned it for months, picked that dress, called the caterer, cried over the guest list. All meaningless now. And the worst part, I didn't know if I should say something right then or keep it quiet, hold my anger, wait for the perfect moment. But I couldn't keep quiet. My mind was racing and I needed answers. When he came home, I was already sitting on the couch, my arms crossed, my stomach clenched tight. I didn't look at him directly. I just held up the phone. "Who's Tom?" I asked, voice steadier than I felt. He froze, blinking at first, then slowly reached for the device, his brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I saw the messages," I said, voice sharp now. "The ones you sent him tonight, the night before our wedding. Tell me what's going on." His face turned pale and he stammered, "It's nothing, just some stupid jokes. We were just messing around." "Messing around?" I echoed, voice rising. "That looks like more than that. I saw the screenshots. You're planning something with him, aren't you? Or did you already do it?" He looked away, guilt clear in his eyes. I felt my stomach turn again, this time with anger. A wave of hot fury washed over me. I had trusted this man with everything, my hopes, my future, my heart. "You lied to me," I said, voice trembling with the effort to keep calm. "You stood there in front of everyone promising to love and cherish me, but behind my back you were sneaking around, probably messing around with your brother." He stepped closer, hands raised slightly as if to explain. "It's not what you think. We're just friends, nothing more." "Nothing more?" I scoffed. "You think I'm stupid? I saw the messages. I saw how you look at him in those photos from the last family barbecue. I trusted you. I thought I knew you." His eyes flicked away again. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I felt my throat tighten, tears threatening but not falling. Instead, I squeezed my fists so tight I thought I might crush something. I knew in that moment my entire world had just shattered, and I had no idea how I was going to fix it or if I even wanted to. But one thing was clear: I wouldn't be walking down that aisle today without addressing this. No matter what, I had to decide my next move. Something in me snapped. I knew I'd have to be smart about this. I couldn't let him spin his way out of it, not anymore. Because this was just the beginning. The next few days blurred together in a haze of anger and confusion. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message on his phone, those cryptic plans he made with Tom. It was like a seed of doubt had been planted, and now I couldn't unsee it. Every moment I spent alone, my mind replayed everything. Our conversations, the way he looked at me during dinner, the way he used to hold my hand. Was I just naive? Or was I stupid for trusting him at all? I kept asking myself what kind of man would do this just hours before a wedding. The vows I had written, the promises I'd made, suddenly felt like lies I'd told myself. I kept thinking about the ring on my finger, cold and heavy, and how it suddenly felt like a trap. I knew I had to find out more. I needed proof. I needed to be sure I wasn't overreacting, but deep down I knew I was. That morning I decided enough was enough. I don't know what drove me more, heralding a sense of justice or pure revenge. I wasn't just going to confront him again, I was going to catch him red-handed. I started planning my next move, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to set a trap. I remembered hearing him mention that Tom was coming over that night, supposedly to pick up some tools from his garage. Well, I had a different plan. I got hold of a spare phone, one I could use to monitor his messages without him knowing. I installed a few simple apps to log his texts and calls, then hid it in the drawer of his bedside table. It was risky, but I needed to see the full picture, what he was planning, who he was still talking to, just how deep this rabbit hole went. The next night, I waited until he left for work, a knot forming in my stomach. I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. I took a deep breath, then slipped the phone into the drawer. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it might give me away. I knew I had played my hand, but I also knew this was the only way I could get the truth. Later that evening, I kept my phone hidden in my pocket, pretending to be relaxed but ready for anything. I watched him leave the house, then headed straight to the drawer. I opened it quietly, heart pounding so hard I was sure he'd hear it. The little phone was there, blinking softly. I pulled it out and activated the logs. Messages began to load. I stared at the screen, feeling the bile rise in my throat. There it was, more than I'd expected. Texts from the night before, from him to Tom, but also from a woman I'd never heard of. Her name was Lisa. She was asking what time they could meet, and he responded that he'd be free after the rehearsal dinner. My stomach clenched again. I logged everything, then turned off the phone and slipped it back into the drawer. I had everything I needed. I was ready to make my move, to confront him with full evidence. But I had to be careful. I couldn't just burst in and accuse him blindly. I had to plan my words, my approach. As I sat there, my hands trembling, I realized something. I'd been naive, yes, but I wasn't going to be a victim in my own story. I had the proof, and now I could finally decide what to do next. I was angry, yes, but I was also determined to get my justice on my terms. I looked at my watch. It was getting late. I had to give him a call soon, set the trap for his confession. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold sweat bead on my forehead. Whatever happened next, I knew I wouldn't go quietly. Not anymore. And that's when I saw the first text from Lisa. It said, "Tonight's the night, can't wait to see you." I clenched my fists again. The game was on. The revenge plan was taking shape, but what would happen next? I was about to find out. The moment I saw that last message from Lisa, my stomach dropped again, but this time it was mixed with a strange kind of relief. I finally had everything documented. The proof was undeniable now. I sat there holding the phone, feeling my pulse race, and I realized I'd crossed a line. I wasn't going to go back to the naive girl I used to be. This was real, and he wasn't going to talk his way out of it. I knew I had to be careful. If I just stormed into the house and accused him, I could blow everything up before I had a chance to really set my trap. I had to play it smart. My plan was simple. I'd pretend I didn't know, keep everything normal, but be ready to catch him in the act. That's when I decided I'd invite him out tonight for a talk. Something casual, but with one goal: record what he said, get him to confess, or catch him in the act again. I reached for the phone and called him. As soon as he picked up, I kept my voice light, almost friendly. "Hey babe, thought we could grab a drink tonight, just to talk, about everything." There was a pause. Yeah, sure, sounds good. What time?" I played it cool. "Around 8. I'll meet you at that place we like, just us." The lie felt strange on my tongue. I'd never been good at pretending, but I knew I had to keep up appearances for now. I didn't want him to get suspicious. I was just a little hurt, trying to understand what was going on. As I hung up, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I set up my phone in the corner of the room, aimed it at the door, and pressed record. I wanted to catch everything on tape, every word, every lie, every guilty twitch. My palms were slick with sweat. I kept telling myself, just stay calm, keep your eyes open. When he came home that evening, I was busy pretending to be normal. I'd cooked dinner, set the table, and was even smiling at him. But inside, I was like a coiled snake, ready to strike. We ate and small-talked, but I could see his eyes darting around trying to gauge my mood. He knew I knew something was off. Finally, I looked him right in the eyes and said, "Let's just talk. No secrets, no games." His face stiffened. "What's there to talk about?" "Everything," I said, voice steady but low. "Your plans with Tom, Lisa, whatever you're hiding." He looked away briefly, then took a deep breath. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do," I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small recorder I'd hidden there. "I've been recording everything you've said the past few days, and I have your texts too." His eyes widened and he tried to grab the device, but I pulled back. "Don't even think about lying now," I said, voice cold, "because I have everything on tape, every word." He looked stunned, like I just slapped him with the truth, but I wasn't finished. I wanted him to see I was serious. "Tonight's the night I find out if your vows were real or just a joke," I said, "because I'm done being played for a fool." He looked down, silent for a long moment. Then finally he muttered, "Okay, fine, yeah, I've been seeing her, Lisa, I didn't want to hurt you, I swear." I cut him off. "Hurt me? You think that's enough? You lied for months, maybe longer. You betrayed my trust in the worst way." He looked defeated, almost trembling. "I didn't want to hurt you. It was a mistake. I was weak." That was the moment I decided I'd had enough. I knew what I was going to do next. I'd gather my evidence, plan my next move. But for tonight, I just wanted him to see I knew the truth. No more lies. After that, I told him to go. I needed time to think, to process everything. As he left, I pressed stop on the recorder and sat back, feeling the weight of it all settle in my chest. In that silence, I looked at the recordings, the messages. I realized I'd finally broken the silence between us. Whatever came next, I was ready to face it. I had the proof now. And I knew one thing for sure, I wouldn't be walking down that aisle, not with someone I couldn't trust. Not anymore. That night after he left, I sat alone in the dim light of the living room, clutching my phone tightly. Every nerve in my body was alive with adrenaline, but beneath that, there was a strange calm. I had what I needed now, proof that he'd been lying, cheating, and planning something shady with his brother. The truth was out, and I was finally seeing who he really was. But I wasn't going to leave this at just exposing him. No, I wanted to make sure he felt the sting of betrayal. I wanted him to realize I wasn't just some helpless girl he could manipulate anymore. If I was going to do this, I had to do it right. I needed a plan, a way to make him see how much he'd messed up, and I wasn't going to stop until I got the justice I deserved. So I started outlining my revenge. It wasn't going to be messy or destructive, just smart. I'd never been petty, but this was different. This was personal. I'd spend the next few days gathering everything I could, more evidence, any slips of the tongue, anything that could be used against him in a courtroom or in a divorce. First, I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer. The moment I walked into that office, I knew I was done playing nice. I wanted a clean break. I wanted him to feel the loss, to understand that betrayal had consequences, and I'd make sure I had all the leverage. Meanwhile, I also reached out to Lisa. I didn't want to be reckless, but I knew I had to make her understand what her actions had caused. I sent her a message, cold and straightforward. "I know what you've been doing with my fiancé. I hope you're proud of yourself. If you're involved with him, then you're just as guilty." I knew she'd see it. Maybe she'd back off, or maybe she'd double down. Either way, I wanted her to know she wasn't getting away with it. Over the next couple of days, I kept my distance from him. I didn't call, didn't text, only responded if he reached out. Every time he tried to talk, I just kept playing the cool girl. Inside, I was boiling. But outwardly, I was calm, collected, and deadly. I also made arrangements to stay with my sister for a few days. I needed space to breathe, to think without his presence clouding everything. I told him I was taking some time to figure things out, which was true. Mostly, I was figuring out how to cut him out of my life completely. Then the moment came. I scheduled a final talk with him face to face. I wanted him to see I was serious, I told him. To meet me at the park near my place, a quiet spot where I could confront him without anyone overhearing. When he arrived, I was already waiting by the park bench. The cold air bit into my cheeks and I felt a strange mix of nerves and relief. I looked him in the eyes and I knew this was it. I was about to deliver my final blow. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" I asked, voice steady but low. I held up the recorder. I have everything, every lie, every message, every plan you ever made. He swallowed hard. Look, I didn't want it to be like this. I'm sorry. I was weak, I swear. Sorry doesn't cut it, I interrupted. You broke my trust, damaged my future, and you thought you could just walk away like it's nothing. He looked down, ashamed. I never wanted to hurt you, it just happened. I stepped closer, feeling my heart pounding again. You're right, sorry isn't enough. I want out and I want you to understand what you lost. I'm exposing everything and I'm taking everything I deserve. He looked up, eyes pleading. Please don't do this, we can fix it. No, I said, voice firm. You had your chance. You threw it away for some bullshit plans with your brother and some other woman. You lied, you cheated, and now you're going to deal with the consequences. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the divorce papers I'd secretly prepared. I handed them to him. Sign these, we're done. I don't want to see you again. He looked at the papers, then back at me. Silence stretched out again, thick and final. I saw the tears in his eyes. Good, I didn't care. As he signed the papers, I felt a strange sense of relief. I was finally free from the betrayal, the lies, the broken promises. I handed him back the pen, then took a deep breath. I hope you understand, I said softly. You lost someone who loved you, and I'll never let anyone treat me like that again. He looked at me with a mixture of regret and defeat. He knew he'd screwed up beyond repair. I turned around and walked away, feeling the cool breeze on my face. I didn't look back. I knew I'd made the right choice. And as I left that park behind, I realized something simple. I wasn't going to let anyone ruin me again, ever. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind, even though I was essentially just sitting still. The moment I handed over those papers, a weight lifted off my shoulders. Yet strangely, a new emptiness settled in. I'd lost someone I once trusted, but I'd gained clarity. Still, the aftermath was more complicated than I expected. Rumors, whispers, friends asking what happened. My phone kept buzzing nonstop, texts from family and friends, some supportive, others just curious. The most unexpected was Lisa. I didn't expect her to try to contact me directly, but she did. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message. Nothing too dramatic, just a simple "Can we talk?" I debated whether to respond. Part of me wanted to tear her apart, but another part, perhaps the smarter, calmer part, knew that confrontation wouldn't serve me anymore. Instead, I met her in a quiet coffee shop away from the chaos. She looked nervous, twisting her hands on her lap. The air was thick with unspoken tension. I just want to say I did mean for it to go this far, she started, voice trembling. I didn't think he'd tell you. I thought we could keep it quiet. I looked at her coldly. Keep it quiet. You're involved with my fiancé. You think I don't know what that means. You're just as guilty as he is. She looked down, swallowing hard. I was lonely. I didn't want to hurt you, I swear. I didn't know it would blow up like this. Lying doesn't help, I said. You knew exactly what you were doing, and now I'm free. I don't need your apologies. I need to move on. She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. I hope you find happiness. You deserve better. That was the moment I realized I didn't need her or him anymore. I'd already started building a new life, one where I was the one in control. I deleted her number after that, feeling lighter with every tap. Back home, I started packing up my things. The house no longer felt like mine, not after everything that happened. I reached out to friends, to family, telling them I was done, that I was moving on. I wasn't going to let betrayal define me. One thing I did that day after I finished packing was go to the mirror. I looked at myself, bruised, hurt, but still standing. I'd been through hell, but I was still here, stronger than I thought. That's when it hit me. The best revenge wasn't just ending it, it was reclaiming myself. I walked to my car, the keys feeling cool and solid in my hand. I'd already decided I was leaving that chapter behind. I'd change my number, start fresh somewhere new. I was done chasing answers, done waiting for apologies that wouldn't come. As I drove away from the house, I felt a strange peace. The pain would fade. The betrayal would become just a bad memory. I realized I had been so focused on revenge, so fixated on getting even, that I'd nearly lost sight of myself. Now, I finally understood what I needed. I needed to heal, to rebuild trust in myself, and to remember that my worth isn't defined by who abandons me or betrays me. It's defined by how I pick myself up afterward. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, knowing I'd taken control. The hurt still lingered, but I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor, and no betrayal could take that away from me. The lesson I keep telling myself. Sometimes the best revenge is just walking away and proving you don't need someone to make you whole. You do that all by yourself. The silence after I left was deafening, but it was also freeing. I didn't look back. I didn't second guess. That day, I made a decision to stop chasing what was broken and start building what was mine again. The house felt colder and emptier, but inside, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. I knew my life was going to be different now. The betrayal had cut deep, but I refused to let it define me. Instead, I focused on what I could control: my healing, my growth, my future. I changed my number, cut ties with those who only added to the chaos, and started planning my next chapter. It was terrifying, yes, but also necessary. The most important thing I learned through all of this is that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. But that's okay, because sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that teach us our real worth. I realized I didn't need someone else's validation. I had everything I needed within myself: the strength to walk away, the courage to start over, and the resilience to rebuild my life from the ground up. And I did. In the weeks that followed, I found new friends, rediscovered old passions, and even started therapy. Little by little, I learned to forgive, not necessarily him or her, but myself for trusting too easily. I reminded myself that I couldn't control their actions, but I could control my reactions. I could choose to be better, stronger, wiser. Now I look back at that time and I see it as a turning point. It was brutal, yes. It hurt like hell, but it also woke me up. It made me realize that my happiness isn't tied to someone else's promises or lies. It's mine to create every single day. The final act was simple. I handed over the keys to the house, packed my last bag, and walked out the door. I called a moving company, set everything in motion, then went to the courthouse to file for divorce. It was a clean break and I was finally free. That day, standing in the courthouse, I felt a strange sense of closure. I scribbled my signature on the papers, looked at the clerk, and said, "It's over, I'm done." Then I turned and walked out, leaving that chapter behind me. As I got into my car, I finally allowed myself to breathe. I was free, not just from him, but from the pain that had haunted me. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw nothing but the road ahead, clear and open. And in that moment, I understood one thing for sure: no betrayal, no matter how deep, can hold you down forever. You find your way back, stronger than ever. Sometimes, the only revenge you need is simply living your life on your own terms. That's what I did. And I know with absolute certainty I will never let anyone take that away from me again.